Well, I would actually suggest to everyone that if you don't have a copy of the GLF demands, they're worth finding and reading. You can pick them up at places like Gays the Word. But one of the things that really struck me was that the Gay Liberation Front created their demands in 1970, and when we came to start Stonewall in 1988, those things still hadn't happened, and they still hadn't happened by 98. A lot of the things that are in there, which are just around, equality, they are around legal protections for people, they are around the right for people to seek partners and to get into relationships, they are the right to have families. We didn't have any of those protections until the early 2000s. It took a very long time for that to happen, and you look at the GLF demands, which are really simple and straightforward, and the equal age of consent for gay men is just one of many areas that they talk about. They're incredibly clearly argued for a movement that was starting not from scratch, but in terms of actually being liberationist rather than just apologetically, please can we have a bit of space here, please, the homophile movement that went before. It's all there, and you see exactly the same demands in the Greater London Council's 1985 manifesto, which was called Changing the World, very ambitiously, and you see exactly the same demands in, if you come to Queer Britain, on one of the walls is the Stonewall manifesto, you could call it. Basically, Stonewall started by about 6 or 7 gay men having a boozy lunch at Ian McKellen's house and sitting down with it, instead of sitting down with the piano and singing show tunes, they sat down with the typewriter and created a new manifesto. They thought it was new. It's the same demands because we still hadn't achieved them at that point. We have achieved some of those things, but some of them are now going backwards. And I think, the Gay Liberation Front wrote their manifesto in a very different time to now, but the theme is universal. I think the only difference between any of the different political parts of the queer movement is whether you are assimilationist or you are liberationist. And what we learned with Stonewall was that to get everybody to work together, you need to be able to find something that you all agree on, instead of focusing on what we don't have in common, which we did far too often in the 1980s. We actually said, what's the baseline? And it was equality. If straight people had it, we wanted it, and that's both rights and responsibilities. And that, for some of the people who started Stonewall, and for some of the people who were in the Gay Liberation Front back in the early 70s, for some people, equality was the end point. They just wanted equality and to be able to go away and lead nice, quiet lives. And that's fine, and actually realising that probably the majority of LGBTQ people were in that group was a bit of a revelation for me, because I'd lived in a very activist bubble in the 80s. But for some of us, equality is kind of a starting point. It's equal to what? Is what straight people have got good enough too? So for someone like me, I want to liberate people. I want people to be able to be themselves. I don't want to be a carbon copy of what mainstream society is about. But actually, in Stonewall, being able to have people there who were from me, who was probably one of the most radical people at the start, through to people who just wanted to change the laws to protect and equalise what we had, we were able to work together on that basic principle. And it's fascinating that we still have those same stresses, I think, within a lot of the movement now. And for some people, they just want to lead a quiet life and have, be able to get married and have 2.4 dogs and a nice time in Eastbourne or wherever. And for some of us, we're like, well, straight life's not all that brilliant. You know, we'd like to work with other movements to change a lot more things. But we have to learn to work with each other on what we have got together. And please go away. I can't read them out to you because it's a whole thing. Please go away and familiarise yourself with the GLF manifesto, because my God, it still makes sense today. What we're not doing enough of, although it's starting to happen, and people have worked out that it needs to happen, is going into Parliament, and going into Parliament with our families, and going into Parliament in ways that our members of Parliament can understand, and not just shouting at them to stop being homophobic and transphobic, but to sit down with them and say, this is what you're doing to my life. And the mass lobby of Parliament last week by trans people and trans allies and trans families was the biggest mass lobby of Parliament ever, and the biggest one before had been for Section 28. So I think, you know, that's a really important thing. And actually talking to people, as you were saying, in ways that they will understand, rather than expecting everybody to come and understand our life and our terminology, is really important. But I don't want to say that we don't need bloody good direct action too, because I have to say, one of the things that gives me joy is the young people rediscovering direct action now and doing some really interesting things to annoy health ministers at their surgeries and you know, occupying buildings and stuff like that. A good piece of direct action is worth a dozen manifestos and reaches far more people. And can I just say, I got so much shit for the headline in the pink paper that is in that
That's like my favourite thing on display. That headline.
The headline was "Dykes penetrate aunties," and the women who had done the action actually came and protested in our offices about that because they were so offended by the patriarchal nature of the headline. And I had to sit there and apologise to them for it. And it was bloody funny. But yeah, it was made up by a man, unsurprisingly. Activism is something that we all do if we care about things. I mean, unless you're a complete doormat, you have been an activist in some way. I mean, for me, activism is my mum telling her ballroom dancing friends in Worthing, not the most enormous bastion of liberality, but just telling them how proud she was of me doing stuff for gay rights, whether they liked to hear it or not. That was my mum just trying to make a little change in the world. Activism is giving a fiver to, I don't know, Queer Britain or your favourite gay cause instead of buying a pint. Actually, we're in London, so it's probably a tenner, isn't it? You know, activism is you know, correcting nicely your neighbour when they say something stupid that they've read in the Daily Mail that you know isn't true. I've got my neighbour trained now, and he actually calls me in and says, "Lisa, is this true?" And I go, "No, it's bollocks." He's like, "So." Everybody can be an activist. It isn't anything special, you're right. It's a label, I think it's a label that people like me get, because nobody can find another word to explain how we manage to interfere with things so much. But actually, you know, most people are capable of being activists, and every time you do something good to make the world a bit better, you're being an activist.